Change and healing begins with letting go. And it's not just a process of just letting go. People say just let go. I mean, I wish, right? It takes years of practice in distancing yourself, cutting people off, moving on, moving forward, grieving, learning and growing in order to find your light. And here's the interesting thing, your light doesn't stay lit. It's put out on numerous occasions. Hello and welcome to another vlog on YouTube and podcast on Spotify by the Fit Minds podcast. Coach Mariah here. Today, we're going to be learning the art of letting go. Now, I'm sitting down today because I realized when writing this vlog that it evoked some pretty intense emotion and it's probably not something I want to be standing for. Originally, I wanted to adopt a professional and structured kind of approach to this vlog and I suppose take the same approach that I've taken in previous vlogs and podcasts and giving tips and advice and what the problem is and what we can do about it. And as I started writing the vlog, it kind of became a little bit more of a personal expression of my own experiences, which it's very difficult not to talk about what a person has been through or an individual has been through when trying to teach how to let go, and I guess it's like an art. It's a learning curve. It's a development of the mind, the soul, the heart and spirit. It really is a whole life change, and it's a way of living, really. So I wanted to, I guess, take a little bit of a different path with this podcast, and I obviously have a little bit of a word of warning that it's not going to take the same structure as what my previous podcasts have, but maybe that might actually be a pretty good thing for those who are, I guess, still holding on to some things that they might need to let go of. Quite simply, it's the concept of letting go. It's in the name. Before I begin the podcast, I want you to think about anything that you may be currently holding on to or have held on to in the past. How have you struggled, with letting go? And what consequences have you had to live with as a result of holding on? It's a pretty heavy question and very thought-provoking. I'd also like to make special mention that I am not a qualified psychologist and therefore I will not be giving any direct advice to an individual on their particular set of circumstances. So everything I'm saying in this podcast is from personal experience and certainly can be something that I can provide as, I guess, a way or an option of moving forward, but it doesn't mean that I'm saying that you need to do this. I will also mention a trigger warning, and this is very important, for domestic violence, eating disorders, depression, anxiety, child abuse, sexual abuse, suicide and infant loss. Very heavy, of course. For those who do not want to listen for the remainder of the podcast, I completely understand, and that is absolutely your choice. However, I will provide some insight into my own struggle with letting go of the past, what I did to overcome the fear of letting go, and where I've ended up in life as a result of doing so. As well as some basic but helpful mindset practices to help shift our thinking around holding on to what no longer serves us. Firstly, I'll start by mentioning I was the worst person for keeping a tight grip on memories, people I used to love, pain, hardship, career paths, and even old versions of myself. I was incredibly intertwined and attached to these past memories, occurrences, past self, and people that I thought were going to be in my life for a very long time. And oftentimes we use those assumptions as a way to force what I call a square peg into a round hole. I was afraid of what might happen if I moved forward, too crippled with fear to do anything but stand still and stay where I was. I spent 7 years, if you don't already know, I talk about it briefly here and there, but I spent 7 years in an on and off again domestic violence, both physical and mental abuse relationship, and I have no shame in talking about it now. And slowly but surely, my mental health deteriorated. It was inevitable. It was the partial beginnings of a severe eating disorder, hospitalizations, weighing in at 45 kilos, and numerous attempts on my life. I was manipulated, repeatedly lied to, hidden, cheated on numerous occasions, gaslighted, stonewalled for months on end, and called crazy amongst it all. And amongst unspeakable physically and mentally abusive acts I can't even repeat verbally, some things I just am not comfortable saying publicly even to this day. I lost a child to this same person at the age of 25, and this became a huge turning point for the eventual change ahead in my life. And my fear surrounding leaving, ending the relationship and knowing I deserve so much more, boiled down to this: not believing I would ever find someone who could simply treat me better, and not believing I deserved it either. I wanted marriage, stability, children in my future, and I was given years of hell instead. But now looking back, I realize much of my experiences, despite not being my fault, were fueled by the idea that I simply could not let go of a person that I used to, not anymore, but I used to care very deeply about. And I think this is certainly the personal experience of lots of men and women. I think, and I would hope that anyone listening to this podcast right now that can relate to this, that hopefully this is not hurting you listening to this type of stuff, but hopefully this can inspire you, that somewhere along this podcast you can learn something and maybe take something away from it. I've not just experienced relationship trauma and recovery from an eating disorder, so that's not just the focal point of my own struggles, but loss of multiple friends who took their own lives. My first dog passed away suddenly the same week I had to move house. I've moved house over 30 times in my lifetime, most of which were not by choice, so I was displaced a lot. I lost my license at 23 and had to commute 2 hours to work and back, mornings and nights, for a year. Now, keeping in mind as well, not all of this is, are occurrences that just happened because some of them did happen, like losing my license as a result of reckless behavior. Growing up, I was sexually abused as a young child by a non-family member, as a teenager by men who I thought I trusted, by my own boss at one point in my mid-20s, and my ex-partner on numerous occasions. And again, I have no shame in talking about it, because I do believe that if you can get to a point where you can talk, and you know what, so most people won't, and they don't need to, and that's okay. There have been stages in my life that I haven't been able to, and I don't think you need to necessarily. But I do believe that getting to a point where I can talk about it openly and share this with other people and talk about how I've moved through it, and certainly how you might be able to as well, can maybe sometimes in some way help somebody. And that's literally all I'm looking at doing. None of it is looking for attention or clout or sympathy. I don't need any of that. I'm in a really good place now. I came from a divorced and chaotic family unit. I actually have a really good relationship with my parents and my family now. It's years and years of working on that. I faced struggles within my childhood and family of alcoholism, violence, poverty, and having previously struggled with alcoholism, smoking, and self-harm myself. And some drug abuse when I was a bit younger as well. I was diagnosed with anxiety, depression, and self-harm tendencies at 12 years of age, dating back to the age of 6, of when it first kind of began. I was hospitalized numerous times for drinking myself into alcohol poisoning. I was diagnosed with an immune disorder called psoriatic arthritis at the age of 16 and went on multiple courses of immunosuppressants, assisted drug to chemotherapy. So again, this is a lot of my past that I don't talk about often, but I will talk about in this podcast about letting go, because I do believe that, and this, I'll get to a point with this, is that there is a purpose in letting go of even this stuff as well. I attended on average 2 days of school a week in year 12 and slept most of my senior year away. Depression and pain sunk in heavier than ever at a time I wish I knew where to look for support. I faced kidney infections, my hair thinning out at 20 years old when I was severely malnourished, and subsequently was diagnosed with borderline personality disorder, OCD, and anorexia nervosa, bulimia nervosa, respectively. Now, obviously the BPD diagnosis, we might even need to review that because it doesn't seem to even appear at all anymore, which is fantastic. I do believe that, you can get to a point where you are stable with lots of different mental health conditions, with lots of treatment and lots of help. I was heavily medicated to manage my mental health up until about the age of 24, so from a young age as well. Early this year, I was diagnosed with adenomyosis of the uterus, causing painful periods, severe digestive upset, and trouble with conceiving. And then struggled to conceive mine and my current partner's first child, or child that I guess that I've been able to go through with so far. Yay, 16 weeks. For over a year. So we actually didn't get pregnant straight away, and that was a struggle. And I'm sure that other people have been through longer periods of time, and even from what I've discussed from the past few minutes of my own loss and grief, that a lot of people have been through this type of stuff, if not lots of different circumstances and ways. And in the last 6 months, I was recently diagnosed with random idiopathic angioedema. I don't know whether anyone remembers the allergic reactions we thought was raspberries. And it is just a random immune reaction to absolutely nothing. But it seemed to be triggered by stress and respiratory tract infections, so colds, weirdly enough. So I get random swelling of the lips and face, different parts of my face. So it's safe to say, for the most part of my life, up until my most recent years, I have carried so much on my shoulders, struggling to let go of it all. I did spend a large chunk of my life attaching to my trauma and my past experiences and what I've been through in a way that almost determined who I was. Of course it becomes a part of who we are, but it was almost at my center. It was the part of myself that I focused on, and certainly my surroundings and what I was going through was what I was just amplifying. And I did feel as though I wouldn't ever have anything different from what that looked like. Struggling to make sense of it all and struggling to see how a better life could ever be on the horizon. The major reason I wanted to list off past trauma is not because, again, I'm not looking for sympathy, admiration, I don't want to be inspirational, it's not like that at all, but more so a case for people to understand that the way that my life is now, I'm sure that a lot of people would look in the window of a life of a person who, online coach and I seem really positive and influential and all this sort of stuff. People talk to me about this and say, you're just so inspirational. I wasn't an inspirational person. I was not in a very good place at all mentally for a very long time. And it's so important to address that. It's so important to list that off, to talk about it and to say, hey, this is a past self. This version you see currently in the life that you see currently, I'm not painting my life like it's perfect. Of course not. I'm still going through struggles, but far less so believing that is who I am and what I need to settle for, and being a little bit more focused on what I can control moving forward. But to remind you, this whole thing is to remind you of a life I used to live. A life that felt like I honestly wasn't going to see an end to it, a never-ending reality, and a life and burden of heavy pain that I held on to. Change and healing begins with letting go. And it's not just as simple a process of just letting go. People say, just let go. I mean, I wish, right? It takes years of practice in distancing yourself, cutting people off, moving on, moving forward, grieving, learning, and growing in order to find your light. And here's the interesting thing, your light doesn't stay lit. It's put out on numerous occasions. And I'm going to be honest, life is not always completely full of light, right? So as I said, it doesn't stay lit. There are darker days, there are harder days, even when you have let go of what's been holding you back. So let's say you do this, so you action it, you get rid of that toxic relationship, the career that you just don't want to be in anymore, and you start to move forward towards what you want. It doesn't mean that everything is dandy from there. That's just not how this works. This is life after all, sorry. It is life. Life is not for anybody. And I often speak about this with lots of different people because I hear about lots of different struggles, even in my work, on a daily basis. I'd be lying if I said coaching didn't involve some aspect of counseling and mentorship. And it's not purposeful, it just happens. People end up telling you things. But I always finish off when I discuss with people and I let them talk is that eventually we've got to get back up again, and letting go is honestly a part of the process of getting back up again. None of us ever have a clean run, a brilliant week, or even a perfect day. It's a lie. If someone says, and vlogs the perfect day on Instagram, they're lying. Something shit happened in their day. They just didn't vlog about it. But what we do have is a series of choices, standards we set for ourselves, and a constant reminder of what's ahead if we simply move through and past what has been plaguing us. It is exceedingly difficult, and something that I think that I didn't understand until I started doing it. My own healing started with finding the courage to leave the soul-destroying relationship, the career that simply wasn't paying me enough, and where I wasn't meeting my full potential. To let go of the grief and loss I held on to so tightly and never spoke about for years. There is a reason why only now I can probably talk about some of this stuff, because it does take sometimes that long to let go. To speak openly about loss, hardship, and struggle, and to let go of the idea that I had to remain in any place with any person or sitting with any memories that kept me stagnant and frozen in time. And this is not to say that you have to forget difficulties or things that have hurt you, or grief or loss or anything like that. It's not about forgetting, but more so about giving yourself permission to feel peace again. Permission to be present in the moment where you are and not necessarily be stuck in a position and a time that is no longer. Now, this is definitely not a means of direct advice, as I've said. It's kind of like one of these podcasts that I've done where it's a mix of personal experience, but also just trying to share as much of my own insight as possible without taking a professional standpoint. We often hear people preaching on the internet about letting go of and leaving relationships, jobs, and places, etc., that are no longer for us. And I would wholeheartedly agree that this is entirely what's necessary to find true peace and happiness. Like, if you want the key to happiness is letting go. And also altruism, caring about other people. I think those two things go hand in hand. And these are two practices that I put on repeat in my life, is like letting go and altruism. Being kind, basically, caring about other people and letting things go. However, no one has the place to give personal advice on a podcast when nobody ever has full insight into your life and circumstances. No one can say to you, like, here's my inspirational life and all the wonderful things that I've done. And, I don't want to be that person rubbing it in your face, but just if you need to go back to the start of the podcast and understand, like, if there's been a shit time, I've been in it, I'm never going to experience exactly the same circumstances as somebody else, and someone else is worse off than me. In fact, probably millions of people are. But at least I can come from a position of saying, hey, I have suffered, I have struggled, and I know wholeheartedly that part of the process of letting go involves an evolution. It's an entire change of your mind, body, and spirit that is freeing. It is freedom from your past. It's freedom from those experiences. What I will say is the practice and art of letting go is an expression of self, of freedom and autonomy. And my God, does it feel like breathing clean air for the first time. Removing the fear around letting go also involves looking inward for what you truly want in life, what you want for yourself, what you envision for your future family, your dream home, travel, what you want in a partner and a career. And sometimes that involves looking outward for what your standards may have to shift towards. And as cliche as it sounds, never, and I mean this, never settling for anything less than that. Not believing that your standard for the bare minimum is anything more than what you should have. Meaning like you don't need to play this off as if it's not important. It is not coincidental that I have now been in a loving, nurturing relationship for almost 3 years. The most stable relationship I've ever been in my entire life. And because it started with letting go, that was literally how the relationship began, was that both of us, both me and my partner, had to let go of our past in order to move forward. I'm about to have a baby, so if you can't already see in the podcast, I'm wearing a dress that is pretty deceiving, but if I turn to the side, you can see a little bumpy bump at night. But I'm about to have a baby, or not about to. I wish it was sooner than, I think I've got 22 weeks to go or something like that. Yes, fun times. I'm about to buy a home and get married, okay? It's not like all of this fell in my lap all at once though. It was the beginning of, learning how to embrace change, the beginning of I guess, the end, so to speak, making the decision to let go of my past, who I was, the toxic relationship, shitty friends. Yes, we've all had them. A draining career, string of jobs that I didn't want to be in, sadness I carried from health struggles, grief, and of course, loss. That change from negative experiences and shifting away from these places, people, and times allowed me to open up new opportunities for a completely different life. And truly, I probably didn't envision it being this good. You know, I still pinch myself every day. I wake up and my partner brings me a coffee in the morning, and I will get emotional talking about this. I never thought I would have that. I really didn't. There are many moments in my day that most people would think would be just completely normal, that I'm really grateful for. I live by the beach. I live 10 minutes from the beach. And I worked and I fought really hard to be here. I fought really hard, long and hard to be here. Moments like knowing that I'm about to have a baby, or hopefully we can, everything goes well. But just little things, the smallest things that I guess without the experiences, the past, everything that I did let go of, that I probably wouldn't be this grateful for. So when I chose this, when I made these choices for myself, a series of choices, it wasn't just one or two. It wasn't just I'm getting rid of this person, I'm breaking up with this person, I'm leaving, I'm blocking, I'm doing all this stuff. It was just one after the other. It was like this giant domino effect towards the future that I have today. That is what has led me here. And I wholeheartedly believe that. This is not luck. I'm not set up in a position where it just happened. One day it just happened. People talk about things just happening. But I think the honest truth is that really good things don't happen to you. They happen as a result of not going after the things that you don't want, not chasing the things that you don't want, not pursuing those, not entertaining them, and only entertaining. I know it sounds hard, but only entertaining what feels good, or certainly, doesn't feel bad, doesn't feel awful within you. I left, blocked, cut ties with, said no to, and gave myself permission to be alone and to be happy alone. So, I think with anyone really, you've got to go through anyone. And if you've been happily married for 30, 40, 50 years, that's fine. Don't stress about it. You don't have to be alone. You've got your person. But I had to learn how to be happy alone, I believe, for myself, before I could let anybody back in again, because I think it gave me an opportunity to not attach myself to people as my self-esteem, as my source of self-esteem. So that was a really big change as well, was letting go of this idea that my partner had to be my everything. I learned to enjoy my own company, to value the very few good people I had in my life. And trust me, you can usually only name them on, one or two hands, and invested my energy there. That's where I invested my energy, into myself and people that cared about me. And you should never feel guilty for doing that. To engage in studies to reach the next point of change in my career, to take the dive with competing for the first time, launching my business, networking, meeting new people, and saying yes to more of what felt good and what felt safe, a new long-standing relationship, saying yes to getting married. I actually used to struggle with safe relationships as well. So it was always that it felt, I guess, normal to be in dysfunction, and I had to learn that it was a good thing to have a loving partner, and that's all part of the process of letting go of these old habits we have that die hard as well. And things like choosing to just do the thing that I want to do, move to the beach, make these decisions. And I honestly can thank my partner for being a person in my life that has never shut down my optimism and my joy and excitement for what I want to achieve. He's never said that's not possible, or no, or you're being silly, or anything like that. He's always just said, let's do it together. I will support you. So trust me, it makes a big difference if you let go of the people who aren't right for you, and then you actually bring in the people who are right for you, or certainly only, interact with those people. Weirdly enough, that starts to bring goodness into your life, but also you don't end up missing out on opportunities where you doubt yourself, because the person in front of you or the people around you, they are supporting you. They are actually helping you find what is meant for you and what you do want and need in life. So it meant heading towards what felt right and never, ever dropping my standards in any facet of my life. And I stand by that even to this day. The same goes for my coaching. You know, if someone says they can't afford my coaching, I just tell them that's okay, no stress, all good. Because I learned to value myself and know what I can deliver and never backing down from that. Sometimes we have to believe we are no longer a victim of our circumstances, but the designer of our life, in order to believe that we can have more than the bare minimum in any way that we wish. You cannot accomplish great things with a mentality which is tied to anything that continues to harm you. This is the interesting thing, is that if you imagine it like shackles, you know, on your wrists, it is keeping you from what is, I guess, I wouldn't say your destiny, but certainly what you really, really desire, truly desire. You are holding yourself back with a mentality, continuing to tie yourself down to something that is just not right for you. My current partner, father of my baby and fiance, was someone I'd known for 8 years, to be exact. So most people think that we met 3 years ago and we got together and here we are. But no, we've known each other for 8 years. And for a long time, in fact, most of that period of time, I simply feared telling him how I felt because I was so afraid of letting go of what I thought I had to hold on to. And so, you know, originally we were just friends. We didn't actually speak a lot in the beginning for obvious reasons. We both had gone back to previous partners and we just kept reconnecting pretty much every time things went sour, I would say, between both relationships. And there was nothing, you know, going wrong or anything like that. It was always in periods of time when we were split from our partners and stuff, because that's what happens in DV and domestic violence relationships. But we'd never actually hung out. We'd never seen each other. We'd only spoken, you know, we'd only just been messaging here and there, and it was all friendship. So neither of us even knew that either of us even liked each other, which was just mind blowing to think that we could go like, I think 5 years intermittently just having chats here and there, and to know that we both actually, you know, wondered whether or not it could develop into something, but never made the move. And then my fear of letting go, right, was stopping me from the current life that I have. Like, I could have been in this position a lot sooner, right? It's crazy. And joy that I currently live the reality of. Like, imagine if 8 years ago I took that first step, but I obviously wasn't ready for it, and I wasn't letting go. Fast forward to 3 years ago, when we got together. It began when we reconnected after a year of losing touch. So 4 years prior, we lost touch, and there was a big year gap there. And strangely enough, it seemed as though we were both ready. You know, 3 years ago when we both, you know, we literally regained a connection, and within a day, that was it. We were dating. Like, wild. And we'd never dated before. Like, we'd never dated before at all. So there was no romantic history. And I think that both of us were just, I guess we'd both let go. We both put ourselves in a position where the timing, and this is why I talk about timing all the time, the timing was right. But the interesting thing is that timing can't be right if you're still holding on and someone else is still holding on, or you've let go and someone else is holding on. You know, the timing actually is perfect when you have let go of your past. The person in front of you, your potential partner, has let go of theirs. Ready to let go of our past, as I said, and choose our future together from the day that we hung out, you know, for the first time. It's a bit embarrassing, isn't it? 5 years of just stuffing around. But I guess that's what good people do. Kind people, we sometimes don't believe that we're worth, you know, and that's what both of us thought, that we weren't worth enough for one another. Crazy. Simultaneously. We had never spent time together prior to the first day we did, and even with all those years talking, right? So again, it was all platonic friendship. There was no sort of advances or anything prior, and it was just so interesting to see that the second that we both took that leap, that was it. We were both so afraid of stepping forward, but from the moment we both made the choice, as I said, simultaneously, the very first time we officially hung out, we committed to one another's future together, and we haven't looked back. And you know, even Alex will vouch for this as well. Like, the night that we hung out, and he ended up going home at 3 a.m. in the morning. We talked all night on the couch. And I just knew from that moment that that was my partner. And I knew that, he was never going to leave, which is just beautiful. Here's the interesting thing. Letting go allows us to open new doors, new windows, make new memories, and give ourselves a chance at a totally different life. How exciting is that? I mean, it's not something to fear, is it? As long as we take the leap. If your fear is currently holding you back from letting go of anything in your life that deep down you probably need to, the hard truth is that you are the only person who is capable of influencing change in the next chapter of your life. It's true. You are the only person who is capable of influencing change in the next chapter of your life. You'd be surprised what can come of letting go. Sometimes you fear the worst when it truly could be the best thing to ever happen to you and more. You've just got to be willing to close your eyes and trust in the power of letting go and starting new at any given point in your life. When it scares you, sometimes that's a sign that you need, especially if you're feeling miserable where you are right now. And if you can say that, if you can say with conviction, I'm miserable, right? I'm miserable. I can guarantee there are going to be contributing factors that you can let go of, whether it's people, places, or things that will actually be a part of that, contributing to it. And what's funny is a lot of people, it's not funny, but a lot of people, including myself, we focus on trying to change another person or to force something or to prove ourselves to the point where we are even more miserable. And little do we know that we fundamentally cannot change another person, but we certainly can change the position that we have in their life. That's the interesting thing. We are the only chess piece that we can move, right? We can't move the other team's chess pieces. This applies to literally anything in life. Not too dissimilar to my sunken cost fallacy podcast, which is, I guess, a similar concept as kind of letting go of things that we've invested time into just because we've invested time into them. This potty is here to give you that gentle nudge that you might need. Surround yourself with support, friends, family, and if it doesn't need to be family or friends, it could be acquaintances, work colleagues, or whomever you can to back you on decisions you know are better for you, not everybody else. And let go of the guilt you associate to making decisions that mean doing right by you, for you. Even if that means you may upset someone else, sometimes this can happen, and that doesn't make you a bad person. People move on. They change jobs. They move towns. They shift in their lives often. And guess what? They are the people who choose to do that. Yeah? They're not selfish for making decisions for themselves. They are actually sometimes self-preserving. It is self-preservation to make choices for your own life. Don't be the person staying stuck out of fear of how others will feel about your decision, especially if it's been weighing heavily on your heart. And I would be lying if I said letting go doesn't come without pain, struggle, and grief of its own. If it didn't, it wouldn't be so damn hard to put into action. But I heard a wonderful saying years ago when I was struggling, and it was this: it is better to be alone than in bad company. I said to a very close friend of mine recently, you owe absolutely nothing to absolutely no one. And as cruel as that sounds, it rings true. We cannot expect others to have the same morals, values, beliefs, or even heart as us. And it is exceedingly frustrating being in that position, putting ourselves in that position, believing that eventually people are going to match our efforts. If your current life and surroundings do not align with who you are, give you something to look forward to each day, whether it's that morning coffee, each and every day, right? If they don't teach you and grow you, set your soul on fire, and bring you intense joy, even to look back on fondly, they are not meant for you. That sounds awful. Obviously, life is going to have shitty experiences, but if it's fundamentally riddled with this stuff and you know what it is, you know you need to remove it. And I'm not saying you need to, but this is just certainly from a position of someone who's been there. Don't wait for life to serve up your perfect circumstances, partner, or career. Sometimes you have to be the person to make it happen before it happens. You have to set yourself up for that, right? Let go and take that first step towards momentous change. Some of the best moments in life come from the smallest decisions, yet yield a huge amount of courage within. And I'll finish with this saying, it's a badass one. I stopped waiting for the light at the end of the tunnel and I lit that bitch up myself. Thanks a lot for listening to today's podcast. A little bit different from the other ones, but with mindset and mentality, I do believe it's a very broad spectrum, a sliding scale, and just so vastly different for each person. And I honestly always do my best to, I guess, stay as genuine and true to my own story, as honest as possible, but by the same token, give some sort of insight and help for those who are struggling themselves. Thanks a lot. Looking forward to doing another one for you soon. Bye.